And Sri Rupa Goswami describes Krishna's stick in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 3.369. He writes, Yasti Sham Tri Has Toja Shva Nagra. Quote, Krishna's yasti, made of dark wood, is 3 cubits in length and is decorated with gold on both ends. Now another name for stick is lagudha, and one who holds such a stick is known as lagudi. I knew a devotee who had that name, Lagudi Das, in Australia. Very nice devotee. In Govinda Lilamrita 4:73 to 76, it describes how every morning Krishna is decorated by the servant gopis, it's written, the servant gopis of Nanda and Yashoda after his breakfast. And it's written there, quote, on the left side of Krishna's sash, they tuck in his buffalo horn. And on the right side, his Murali flute, which is studded with wonderful jewels. They place his laguda, his stick, in his left hand, and his play lotus, which lotus-eyed Krishna playfully twirls around, is in his right hand. So therein it's described that Krishna carries his stick in his left hand. Now, Rupa Goswami quotes a devotee named Sri Yogeshwara in his Padyavali, verse 153, that sometimes Krishna keeps his laguda, his stick, on his thigh, and he rests his hand upon it. He writes, Devadham ekajan kva lalita lagudhi murdhini brin yaste bahu. O Lord, you have your hands placed on top of the curved laguda that rests upon your thigh. Actually, we often quote Rupa Goswami. So often he gives us such transcendental details into Radha and Krishna Balaram and all the residents of Vrindavan. We're so much indebted to him. Actually, there's a beautiful prayer that I just discovered about Rupa Goswami. Sane Saraswati Rupam Vyasa Rupam Cha Shikshane Natye Bharata Rupam Tam Shri Rupam Prana Mayam Yaham. Quote, unto the personality who is Saraswati Rupa, the personification of Saraswati Devi in the domain of knowledge, Vyasa Rupa, the personification of Vyasa Dev in the domain of teaching others, and Bharata Rupa, the personification of Bharata Muni in the domain of dramaturgy. Dramaturgy means in drama. Unto that Shri Rupa, I pay my obeisances. Isn't that beautiful? This was composed recently and translated by my good friend Hari Parshad Das, Sanskrit scholar. Now, it's interesting that in the famous Balabhadra Sahasranam, the Balabhadra Sahasranam, which is the 1,000 names of Lord Balaram, which I found in Garga Samhita, Canto 8, Chapter 13. In verse 7, it's described that Lord Balaram is also a lagudi, one who carries a stick. He also carries a stick. It's written there, lagudi venu vadanaha. So Balaram also has a stick. Now actually, Krishna, because I did a lot of research, Krishna has a variety of sticks, not just one. Like he has, we discussed the other day, his flutes and mirrors. So there's different kinds of sticks as well. And one with a handle, a stick with a handle is called lati. And a crooked one is called bashki. And a straight and long one is called lakuti. And one embedded with gems and gold is called manoharini. Beautiful name, manoharini. And one that tilts from one side, that type of stick is called vakra, V-A-K-R-A, vakra. Another one, which is shaped like a snake, is called bhujasgini, bhujasgini. And one shaped like a capital T, is called Shashcharini. Shashcharini. Now you know the different types of sticks Krishna uses. And also I was reading that the tradition of holding a stick is actually a symbol of status in India, in Vedic culture. And you may remember in our series on historical Vrindavan, in one of the lectures we discuss how in Old Braj, a turban, a mustache, and a stick designated the status of a gentleman and his family. Gentlemen, they would have turban, mustache, and stick. Now Krishna, he's not elderly. He's ever youthful, so he doesn't have a mustache, but he does wear a turban and he holds a stick in his hand. Now the first time that Krishna ever held a stick was actually on the day of Gopastami, when he took charge of herding cows. The acharyas say that Krishna herds cows with the help of 4 different things. His flute, his voice, because he uses his voice in different ways to call the cows. His blanket, it's called kamaria, Kamaria. Kamaria, that's the name of his blanket. And the 4th things that he uses when he's herding cows, his stick. Some other things. Now actually, there are many other ways that Krishna uses his stick or sticks. For example, I was reading that he uses his stick for resting his hands. He uses his stick, as we know, for breaking the pots of the gopis, which are filled with butter, curd, and Yamuna jal. He uses sticks for stick fighting with his cowherd friends. And I read he uses sticks for jumping over muddy puddles during the rainy season. And lastly, he uses sticks for stretching his limbs and arms after waking up from a nap in the forest. So many nectar and details. Just about a stick. Nothing's ordinary what Krishna uses. It's extraordinary. I also read that one time Krishna gave one of his favorite sticks to Sri Radha, which is described gave her the power to make herself invisible whenever her in-laws were searching for her. And she also embraces that favorite stick whenever she feels separation from Krishna. She embraces the stick. Now, a little side note here. Amongst Bengali devotees, there is a very interesting saying that Krishna, when he comes as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, hides everything about himself in Kali Yuga. He hides his dark complexion, he hides his flute. Mahaprabhu doesn't have a flute. He hides his Tribhanga form, he hides his peacock feathers. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't hide a stick, or his stick. So when Krishna comes as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he doesn't hide his stick, which he holds as his sannyas danda. Mahaprabhu has a sannyas danda. So when Krishna comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, many things are hidden, but not his stick. It's there in Mahaprabhu's pastimes as his danda. So it's a beautiful, very sweet insight. Now, not only Krishna and Balaram carry sticks, but their cowherd boyfriends do as well. That's described several times in our scriptures. I found Srimad Bhagavatam 10:12:3. We hear that quote, "At that time, hundreds and thousands of cowherd boys came out of their respective homes in Brajabhumi and joined Krishna, keeping before them their hundreds and thousands of groups of cows. The boys were very beautiful, and they were equipped with lunch bags, bugles, flutes, and sticks, and sticks for controlling the cows." There's like sticks everywhere. I was reading that those gopas would tap the cows on their backs with the sticks to indicate a particular direction that the cows should go in. Often there was such a connection between the boys and the cows that the boys would simply tap the ground with their sticks, and the cows would know where to go. Talk about an intimate relationship. Gomata ki. The boys would also play with their sticks while, when they had their free time, they'd twirl them high in the air, and then they would catch them when they came back down. And they would even have contests. Who could do this the best? Now, when I read that, I remembered in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a pastime to commemorate this. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu commemorated this particular pastime of stick twirling, along with Lord Nityananda, on one occasion in Jagannath Puri. They had a competition. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda had a competition who could twirl a stick and then throw it high in the air and then catch it very expertly when it came down. And guess who won? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he won. Because he could catch the stick within his legs. Wow. That's how he won. There two are twirling and catch. But Mahaprabhu won because he could catch the stick between his legs, which is something that it says Nitai couldn't do. Now, another way in which the boys used their sticks, as we mentioned it, was in fighting. And Rupa Goswami describes in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 386 that one of the ways of experiencing Sakyaras means friendship, like the boys' friendship. One of the ways of experiencing Sakyaras is the stick fighting between the cowherd boys. He writes, Laguda, Lagudi, Kriya. So, for stick fighting, the boys would actually break up into groups of two, and they would fight. Of course, it's all keli, it's all playful fighting. But Sri Rupa Goswami explains at one point that as a result of these stick pastimes, the boys would often, that was going on, and boys are, at the end they would just collapse on the forest floor, exhausted in what? Blissful ecstasy. When you get exhausted in Krishna consciousness, not like material life. You're exhausted in blissful ecstasy. So that's what would happen with the boys that would fight. They just, after some time, they collapse on the forest floor in blissful ecstasy. In fact, he says, they were so absorbed in bliss that one time when it was time to get up and go home, Krishna forgot his stick that he had placed on the ground next to him, so he forgot it. And later in the day, when Krishna realized this, he was very upset. In fact, he and all the boys, they searched everywhere in the Vrindavan forest. They couldn't find that stick. They couldn't find Krishna's stick. So the acharyas say that since that day, no one has seen or found Krishna's stick, although many devotees have tried. Be a nice thing if you go in Parikama to Vrindavan, I want to find that stick. Many devotees have tried, but no one has seen or found that stick that Krishna left on the ground after they had their stick fighting. Now the acharyas also say that because that stick enjoyed the bliss of Krishna's touch, just to look for that stick is an act of devotional service. Wow. Because that stick enjoyed the bliss of Krishna's touch, just to look for that stick is an act of devotional service. So, one day if you're in Vrindavan, you don't have anything to do, just walk around and look for the stick. That will be devotional service. Such is the nature of our beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. And interestingly, it's accepted amongst all sadhus and devotees in Vrindavan that whoever eventually finds that stick gets to keep it. Whoever finds that stick gets to keep it. Hare Krishna. So, I'm still in America. I'm in Austin, Texas, and we have a big program tonight, so I'm going to finish here. Been quite busy, but I can't neglect this duty to continue with our series every Friday somehow or other. So we'll finish today with the verse from one of my favorite poets, Rasa Khan. You remember Rasa Khan? We spoke about him extensively in one of our lectures on historical Vrindavan. So he writes a nice verse which we can conclude today. Ya lakuti aru kama riya par, raj titu lokanko taji dharo. Quote, it's so nice. I will leave the pleasure of having 9 types of enjoyment and the 8 types of divine cities for gaining the pleasure of herding cows, the cows of Nanda Maharaj and his son Krishna. I will renounce thousands of royal palaces just to live in the thorny bushes and kunjas of Braj. I will renounce the kingdom of the 3 worlds for the shawl and the stick of Krishna. Poet Ras Khan says, when oh when will that day be mine? Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhus. We may be able to get one more class on sticks. I didn't actually finish my research because I've been busy here, but I'm going to do that. We may be able to have another class on sticks. It's a very important part of Krishna's paraphernalia, and so nectarian to discuss. So be back in 1 week next Friday. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shamasundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dhamma ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Jai Jai Sri Sri Radhe Shyam. Glories to Prabhupada, the revealer of the Dham. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome back once again to our ongoing series on the glories of Sri Vrindavan Dham. But first, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pastacha Deshatarine. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, we are continuing with our mini-series on stimulation for ecstatic love, and this will be part 5. Once again, in this series, we will be focusing on those things, those articles that awaken our dormant love for Krishna. And today, we will continue discussing about Krishna's stick, which of course was the subject matter of our last class. So again, the name for stick in Sanskrit is yasti, and you may remember that another name for stick is laguda, and one who holds such a stick is known as lagudi. And in our last lecture, we gave a number of examples, as well as a few pastimes, where Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys all carry sticks. But it's interesting that gopis, the cowherd girls in Vrindavan, they also carry sticks. The most obvious gopi, of course, is Mother Yashoda. As we hear in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 9, verse 9, where it's stated, quote, when Lord Krishna saw his mother stick in hand, he very quickly got down from the top of the mortar and began to flee as if very much afraid. When Lord Krishna saw his mother stick in hand, like that. So that's a very prominent example. And verse 2 of the famous Damodar Ashtakam describes what Krishna did when he saw the stick. We all know, Rudantam Muhur Netra yugmam rijantam karamboja yugmena satankanetram. Upon seeing his mother's whipping stick, he cried and rubbed his eyes again and again with his two lotus hands. So sweet. Now, not only did Mother Yasoda carry a stick, but sometimes younger gopis would also carry bamboo sticks to playfully strike gopas, cowherd boys, in retaliation for teasing them or trying to steal their milk products. I was reading as a result, sometimes the cowherd boys carried shields to protect themselves from these young gopis and their sticks. And actually such playful leelas are celebrated in Vrindavan, mostly in Varshana, in the month of Kartik, during the famous festival of Holi. I've seen this. At that time, groups of ladies pour powdered colors over the men in the town, and symbolically strike them with their sticks. And I've seen they have big sticks in these cases. This is called Lath Mar Holi. Lath Mar Holi. Lath refers to those big sticks, and Mar in Sanskrit means to beat. So the festival of Lath Mar Holi. But in general, sticks were the constant companions of Krishna and his boyfriends, who used them very often in a variety of ways. For example, I was reading in Garga Samhita, Canto 2, Chapter 20, verses 22 to 28. There it's described how Krishna once manifested the Ganges with his Vetra. Now, Vetra is another name for stick. Sometimes in this pastime they call it his dancing stick. So the Ganga that he manifested with this particular Vetra, this stick, it's called the Vetra Ganga. The Vetra Ganga. And it's a really nice pastime. So I'll share it with you. On the afternoon of Denakasura, the ass demon's death, the cowherd boys returned from Talavan, where the pastime took place, to their homes and described the heroic feats of Krishna and Balaram to their parents. And they're ridding the forest of, they described them as demoniac donkeys, they told their parents. Krishna and Balaram killed all the demoniac donkeys. Now it's described that a number of young gopis overheard the boys relating Krishna's pastimes in the Talavan forest, and as a result, they developed a strong desire to visit there, as we should by hearing such pastimes. Now, knowing the hearts of the gopis, Krishna understood this. So one day, after enjoying a rasa dance with them, it was at Chandra Sarovara, he took all the gopis to Talavan, the forest of Talavan, and he showed them where he and Balaram had tossed these demoniac donkeys into the trees. And it's described that in celebration, Krishna and the gopis started dancing again. In fact, they danced so much that they were all profusely perspiring. And so at the end of the dance, these gopis approached Krishna and said, "Our dear Krishna, keeping up with your dancing has made us all very thirsty, but the Yamuna River is so far away. Your duty is to protect us, so please get us some drinking water from somewhere. Otherwise, Krishna, how will we continue on?" They said like that to Krishna. So Krishna smiled at the request and struck the ground with his Vetra, with his stick. As a result, a spring of Ganges water bubbled up from the ground and formed a lake filled with blue lotuses. So the gopis, they quenched their thirst in that lake, and then on Krishna's invitation, they entered the water for Jal Keli, which means water pastimes with him. Keli means playful pastimes, and Jal, water. So Jal Keli, water pastimes with him. And after enjoying pastimes in the water, Krishna and the gopis had a picnic beneath the star-filled sky that evening. And while the gopis ate, it's described, juicy tala fruit, Krishna told them pastimes of how he had rid the Vrindavan forest of many kinds of demons. Just telling them like that. Now that Vetra Ganga in the Talavan forest, I was reading, it's said to be so pure that merely by touching it, one frees himself from the sin of killing a Brahman. And not only that, but bathing in it, in the Vetra Ganga, qualifies one to enter Goloka Vrindavan. We shouldn't think statements like that are exaggeration. It's one of the 10 offenses to think the glories of chanting Hare Krishna are exaggeration. There's no exaggeration. This is the potency of the Dham. By bathing in that Vetra Ganga, one qualifies oneself to enter Goloka Vrindavan. Let's go there. And I read that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, well, as you know, he visited Talavan during his pilgrimage to Vrindavan. And there he worshipped the deity of Lord Balaram, the killer of Dinakasura, and he himself personally bathed in Vetra Ganga. Hare Krishna. So there's another nice pastime, also described in Garga Samhita, but this time it's in Canto 3, Chapter 7, from verse 15 to 23. And this pastime took place at Govardhan Hill, near Govindakund, on the banks of the now not visible Nipakunda, not visible to those with material eyes, but those whose eyes had been purified by the process of bhakti. They can still see this kund, this Nipakund, on the just at the bottom of Govardhan Hill. So the acharyas say that that particular area is called Drona Kshetra, because Krishna once served yogurt on a summer's day to the cowherd boys there in cup-shaped leaves made from nearby trees. Now, the pastime began on a particularly hot day while the cowherd boys were laying on the banks of that Nipakund as their cows grazed nearby. And they said to Krishna, "Krishna, it's so hot. Please relieve us by getting some cooling yogurt for us to drink." So Krishna was reclining in the shade of a tree. At this time he was listening to the pleas of his friends, when all of a sudden he heard the sound of girls' voices and tinkling anklets. And peering over the top of a nearby bush, lo and behold, he saw Srimati Radharani and her gopis coming down the road towards him, carrying what looked like pots of yogurt on their heads. So Krishna didn't waste a moment, and while calling out the names of his friends, he jumped out from behind the bush into the cowherd girl's path, brandishing his yasti. Remember, yasti, his stick. And the cowherd boys quickly crowded behind Krishna. And Subal called out, "Hey girls, what have you got in those pots?" But the gopis, they simply kept walking along. So Krishna took his stick and struck the ground with it. And he said, "Wait a minute, girls. You can't pass by without paying a tax toll." Here we have another tax pastime. To which, how could you say, a chorus of girls replied, "Krishna, your greedy mind is always obsessed with taxing those over whom you have no jurisdiction. Let's see how much tax you collect after you are locked up in Kamsa's prison." So Krishna replied, it's really nice, "Who cares for Kamsa or his prison? You go ahead and complain to him. That would only give me an excuse to go to Mathura and kill him sooner than I have planned." To go to Mathura and kill him sooner than I have planned. So hearing this powerful challenge from Krishna, what did the cowherd boys do? they all stood up and blew their horns. Stood up real straight and blew their horns, shook their sticks, and it's described, filled the valleys of Govardhan Hill with cheers and shouts of, "Down with the king, kill Kamsa! Down with the king, kill Kamsa! Down with the king, kill Kamsa!" And in the midst of this commotion, Sridham, who of course is Srimati Radharani's brother, informed Krishna that the pots the girls were carrying contained yogurt that his sister had prepared the night before, adding that it was yogurt too good to be sold to strangers at the market. Krishna. So at this point, Krishna stepped forward and very, looking for a word, very deftly lifted a pot of yogurt off the nearest gopi's head. And all his friends, they followed suit. They did the same thing with surprisingly little resistance from the girls. Because in fact, Srimati Radharani had made the yogurt especially for Krishna and his friends, and had enlisted the help of her girlfriends to carry it to the market, knowing well that by walking past Giriraj, they would be ambushed. Ambushed. So as the boys triumphantly placed the pots on the ground and prepared to devour the contents, Lalita Devi, she spoke up. She said, "Krishna may be fearless amongst his friends in this secluded forest, but after we report this theft to the king, we will see how bold he is while being surrounded by powerful soldiers in the city of Mathura." She's always defending Radharani and the gopis. Then with Radharani in the lead, the gopis left for their homes. Meanwhile, Krishna and his friends, like Raktak and Pataka, collected large cup-shaped leaves from the nearby Kadamba trees. And soon everyone was relishing the yogurt that Sri Radha had secretly prepared for them and which they had mischievously stolen from the gopis. Hare Krishna. So, such blissful pastimes, prasadam pastimes, are forever immortalized in the Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, particularly in verse 10, 13, 11, where it is stated, Krishna is yagya bhuk, that is, he eats only offerings of yagya. But to exhibit his childhood pastimes, he now sat with his flute tucked between his waist, his tight cloth on his right side, and his bugle horn and cow driving stick on his left. Holding in his hand a very nice preparation of yogurt and rice with pieces of suitable fruit between his fingers, he sat like the whorl of a lotus flower, looking forward towards all his friends, personally joking with them and creating jubilant laughter among them as he ate. At that time, the denizens of heaven were watching, struck with wonder at how the personality of Godhead, who eats only in yajna, was now eating with his friends in the forest. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Famous verse, actually. And we'll finish today with part of Srila Prabhupada's commentary on this verse, giving us a very beautiful insight to this pastime. Prabhupada writes, when Krishna was eating with his cowherd boyfriends, a certain bumblebee came there to take part in the eating. Krishna joked, "Hey bumblebee, why have you come here to disturb my Brahmana friend, Madhu Mangal? Is it that you want to kill a Brahmana? This is not good." At that, all the boys laughed and enjoyed speaking such joking words while eating. Thus the inhabitants of the higher planets were astonished at how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who eats only when yajna is offered, was now eating like an ordinary child with his friends in the forest. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for those and many more transcendental insights into Krishna's wonderful pastimes, in the topmost planet in the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan Dham. Please allow us to someday join you there in Braj. So thank you, Prabhus. Like I said, we'll finish here. Maybe, just maybe, we'll get another stick pastime. I'm not sure. I have to dive into the scriptures again. But if not, we'll pick another article which we can discuss about, which helps stimulate our dormant love for Radha and Krishna and Balaram, all the resonance of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, December Marathon ki, back home, back to Godhead ki, Gaur Premanandi, Jai Jai Sri Sri Radhe, Sham, Jai Sham. Hare Krishna, very dear devotees, welcome back once again to our ongoing lectures on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatade Shatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, we're continuing with our mini-series on stimulation for ecstatic love, and this will be part 6. And of course, as we've discussed through this series, we hope to increase our enthusiasm for devotional service to the Lord. Srila Rupa Goswami writes in Padyavali, text 93, O Lord Krishna, I pray that the remnants of your foodstuff may become as palatable to me as a woman's lips are palatable for a materialist. I pray that the narration of your pastimes may become so sweet to my ears as the words of a young girl are sweet for a materialist. I pray that the sight of your transcendental form may become as pleasing to my eyes as the beauty of a young bride is pleasing to her husband. And I pray that I may always chant your holy names in the same way that a lover reads aloud a letter from his long-separated beloved. Hare Krishna. So, from this verse we can understand that essentially Krishna consciousness means falling out of love with Maya or illusion and falling into love with Krishna. For that, we have to let Krishna, sweep us off our feet with his charming beauty. In this regard, again, Sri Rupa Goswami writes in Padyavali, a dark-complexioned thief has stolen my heart. Look, he has already stolen the sins of the surrendered devotees, the life breath of Putana, the bracelets and garments of the young gopis, and the eyes and hearts of the saintly devotees. So, once again, so many times, once again we are indebted to Srila Rupa Goswami. Not only us, but many devotees in the past have felt the same way, very indebted to him. One such devotee I was reading, his name is Govardhan Bhatta Goswami. Govardhan Bhatta Goswami. He was one of the prominent Goswamis in the line of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, one of our 6 Goswamis in Vrindavan. He lived during the time of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he actually wrote a commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the introduction to his commentary, he writes, and I'll quote him, "My greatest good fortune is that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and I are friends forever." That's so sweet. My greatest good fortune is that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and I are friends forever. So this Govardhan Bhatta Goswami, he wrote another book called Govardhan Bhatta Goswami Grantha Vali. Govardhan Bhatta Goswami Grantha Vali. And one part of his book is called Shri Rup Sanatan Stotra, in which I was seeing there's many shlokas glorifying our beloved Rupa Goswami. For example, here are two of the verses. Who can achieve the shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Radha without the association of Sri Rupa? By hearing his beautiful compositions and by looking at his incomparable pearl-like beauty, Sri Gaurasundar happily dances while glorifying and praising him with all the devotees. Today, Sri Rupa is residing in Sri Vrindavan, being more humble than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. He is holding a clay pot in one hand and a woolen blanket on his shoulder. He is singing the pastimes of Radha Kanta while sometimes sitting in the shadow of a kalpa vriksha tree. He is constantly chanting the names of Krishna, and every day he begs from the houses of Brahmanas. Hare Krishna. We thank that devotee. We have to thank so many devotees. So, within that beautiful composition, we hear that Rupa Goswami used to wear a woolen blanket on his shoulder. Now sometimes when I'm doing the research, I see that sometimes they're called blankets and sometimes they're called shawls or even chadars. But more often than not, they're called blankets. But not only did Rupa Goswami and the other 5 Goswamis of Vrindavan wear these woolen shawls or blankets, but so did Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends. And such shawls or blankets are listed in our Shastras as one of the items that can awaken, or we're using the term in this series, stimulate our devotion for the Lord. So I thought blankets would be the subject matter for today's lecture. That was all the introduction. Blankets, let's discuss blankets as part 6 in our series of stimulation for ecstatic love. Now in my research, I found that Krishna often uses a blanket and in various ways during his pastimes. In the online extended ISKCON Vaishnav songbook, we find in verse 3 of the song Jaya Madhava Murari. If you go online, you can find that. Jaya Madhava Murari. The following: Gwala Bhala Shanga Dhenu Charai Vana Vana Brahmata Pire Yadu Rai Kande Kamara Kare Radhe Sham Shama Sham. So beautiful. Translation is, Dear Krishna, you herd the cows in the company of cowherd boys. You, the monarch of the Yadu dynasty, thus wander from forest to forest, carrying a blanket. Here we go. Carrying a blanket draped over your shoulder. O Radhe Sham, Sham, Sham. Beautiful song. Other ways that Krishna uses a blanket are, for example, like a bedspread when he sleeps after his forest lunch party, it's described. It's like that, they say. His forest lunch party. Spreads out a blanket to take some rest along with his cowherd boyfriends. He uses a blanket to cover his body from rain. And I was reading the fabric of such a blanket doesn't absorb water. Krishna has a waterproof blanket. I also read in one pastime let me remember, that Krishna covers himself with a blanket when Mukara is Sri Radha's grandmother, tries to catch Radha and Krishna together. He hides under his blanket. Now, I was also reading, sometimes Krishna ties a blanket and uses it as a turban. And the sweetest thing is that when he sees a small calf shivering in the cold, he covers it with his blanket to warm it up, along with a hug. Isn't that nice? When he sees a small calf shivering in the cold, he covers that calf with his blanket to warm it up, and he also gives the calf a hug. Hare Krishna. Now, it's also described that whenever Sri Radha, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani Ki, when Sri Radha looks at Krishna's dark blanket hanging or lying somewhere, her eyes immediately become filled with deep love. And she experiences ecstatic symptoms. In fact, here in Braj they say, Sut che jhara byaj ho prayaro. If you love someone, then you love his or her things more than you love your own self. Very beautiful. Sut che jhara byaj ho prayaro. If you love someone, then you love his or her things more than you love your own self. Well, that's Sri Radha. It's described that Sri Radha herself also uses a blanket from time to time in her pastimes with Krishna. For example, once on a dark moon night, Sri Radha's gopi friends assembled in her sitting room at the Yavat. And there she was taking rest. And when she rose from her sleep, they helped her dress up to blend in with the darkness in order to go through the Vrindavan forest undetected to meet her beloved Krishna. She has to go out to the forest to meet Krishna. So they dressed her up appropriately. It was a dark moon night, so they dressed her in dark clothes, like a dark blue sari I was reading, and a dark blouse or choli. And then her servants adorned her braid with a black tassel and smeared dark musk on her body and decorated her with dark blue ornaments to match her dress. Like we call that Shringara here in Vrindavan. The Shringara means the jewels, all dark blue sapphires like that. And they also covered her with a shawl or a blanket. Now, interestingly enough, Sri Rupa Goswami writes in verse 4 of his Gandharva Sampartana Ashtaka as follows. It's related to this pastime. O goddess who strongly wishes to meet her lover, when can I arrange for your blissful nocturnal meeting with the son of the king of Braj in the grove by covering your body with a cloud blue shawl? By covering your body with a cloud blue shawl. Rupa Goswami is praying like that. And by removing the ankle bells from your feet. Wow. Now, we move on. The cowherd boys, Krishna's cowherd boy friends, they also use blankets in their seva to Krishna, because everything in Vrindavan exists for the pleasure of Krishna. The blankets. So while these cowherd boys graze their calves in the pastures of Braj, Krishna and Balaram, they play with their friends in various ways. I was reading they sometimes throw stones at the fruit in the trees, and when the fruits fall, they either kick them around, like in playful sport, or they throw them around like playing catch. And sometimes they imitate the fighting of bulls, cowherd boys. And during these pastimes, like imitating the fighting of bulls, the boys cover themselves with their blankets. And like bulls, they loudly roar and they charge each other. So little detail, but pure nectar. Love is in the detail. Now the mention of blankets in Krishna's pastimes comes up, how could I say, in a variety of ways. Little ways. For example, after Krishna chastised the Kaliya serpent by jumping into the Jamuna River and fighting with him, he came out soaking wet, and as we know from reading Krishna book, Krishna was shivering from cold. So it's described that Mother Yasoda dried him off and wrapped him up in soft blankets. But of course, even then, Krishna was still shivering. So he climbed up Dwadasa Ditya Tila to warm himself in the afternoon sun. And we see that every time we do Parikrama here in Vrindavan, we pass by Dwadasa Ditya Tila. That's where Sanatana Goswami Samadhi Mandir is, and that's where the Madan Mohan temple is. So it's a little high, so Krishna climbed there to get warm in the sun because the blankets weren't enough. But blankets. I also read that one morning, this is interesting, one morning both Mother Yasoda and Yogamaya, went to wake Krishna as usual, but on that particular occasion he barely stirred in response to their calls, and instead, it's described, he pulled a blanket over his head and moaned to his mother and Mother Purnamasi, "I feel sick today." He pulled a blanket over his head and he moaned, "I feel sick today." So they let him sleep. Now an interesting thing is that there's a forest in Vrindavan. We've many times described forest and sub-forest and sub-sub-sub-forest, etc. So there's a forest here in beloved Vrindavan, where I fortunately find myself again, called Kamaravhana. One meaning of Kamara is blanket. And there's a famous blanket pastime that took place in Kamaravan, from which the forest got its name. This pastime is described by the famous poet Surdas. How many times have we quoted Surdas? Actually, I've been to his samadhi. Very simple but very beautiful samadhi at Chanda Sarovar here in Vrindavan. And his poetry is just loved by Brajabasis. So in one of his poems, we find the following pastime. And I'll summarize it a little bit, rather than just read his poetry, summarize. It all began on a winter day in Vrindavan. Actually, I'm here in Vrindavan now in the winter. It's very chilly. So it all began on a winter day in Vrindavan when Krishna and his cowherd boyfriends were herding their cows near sacred Govardhan Hill. Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. So from there, Krishna sent a message to Sri Radha to secretly meet with him in nearby Kamaravan forest. Now this message was delivered to Sri Radha by one of Krishna's boyfriends, one of the cowherd boys. How's that? Well, most of Krishna's cowherd friends have little to do or nothing to do with the young girls of Vrindavan. But there was, or you could say there is, a special class of cowherd boys who actually facilitate Radha and Krishna's meetings. We discussed this several years ago. They're called Priya Narma Sakas. Priya Narma Sakas. Cowherd boys like Shubal and Ujval, who deliver messages back and forth between Radha and Krishna. Now, there's also gopi messengers, young girls who deliver messages. The principal gopis who deliver messages are 3 in number. Vrinda Devi, Vrindarika, actually there's 4, Mela and Murali. They're the main message. But there's lots of gopi messengers. And all of them are described, I was reading, as fair-complexioned and always dressed in colorful garments. Always dressed in colorful garments. Not like nowadays in Kali Yuga. People wear grays and blacks and browns. Braj, dressed in colorful garments. We see that especially now in Rajasthan. the ladies dress in many colors. So it's written that all these gopi messengers, they're filled with great love for Radha and Krishna, and, listen to this, they all know the geography of Vrindavan very well. They all know the geography, because they have to take the messages, so they know all the pathways and the secrets here and where to hide in the caves, and all glories to those gopi messengers. Now, then again, there are the famous parrots of Vrindavan, like Sukha and Sari. They're famous also for carrying messages back and forth between Radha and Krishna. And Vichakshana. Who's Vichakshana? That's Krishna's pet parrot. And he's described in the Goswami literature as a very experienced personality in delivering messages for his master Krishna. He's famous here in Braj for having said one time, the parrot, of the many services rendered to the Prince of Braj, delivering messages is the most exciting. He thinks like that. Of the many services rendered to the Prince of Braj, Krishna, delivering messages, it's the most exciting. There's many different rasas or mellows of love for Krishna, and each devotee is fully satisfied in that relationship with Krishna. So many, because variety is the spice of life. And finally, we know that Krishna sends messages throughout Vrindavan with his famous Venu, or flutes. So anyway, on this particular winter day, Krishna sent a message to Sri Radha to meet him at Kamaravan, this sub-forest. And on that day, the air was very chilly, winter. So Krishna and all the cowherd boys were carrying their thick blankets with them. So when the time came for Krishna to secretly meet Sri Radha at Kamaravan, he had to get away. So he told his friends that he wanted to wander and see the beauty of Vrindavan alone. And taking his blanket, he made his way to this beautiful Kamaravan. And when he arrived, it's described, he placed his folded blanket on a large rock. And sitting on it, he waited for Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani to come. And in this poem by Surdas, he describes Krishna's blanket as black in color. That was interesting. Krishna has a black blanket. He calls it Kari Kamara. Kari Kamara. Excuse me. Kari Kamara. That's the name of Krishna's blanket. Kari Kamara. But unfortunately for Krishna, even after many hours, Sri Radha had not showed up. So he became despondent. Because one thing about Krishna is that he's very unhappy when he's alone. Why? Because, very simply, without his friends and companions, he could not taste or experience rasa. Rasa means, one definition of rasa is the mellows of loving exchange. Krishna's essential nature is to enjoy. That's confirmed in the Taittiriya Upanishad 261, in which the constitution, you could say, of Krishna's body is described as follows. I found this. It said, Krishna's head is pleasure, his right side is joy, his left side is delight, and his identity is bliss. I'll recite that again. Krishna's head is pleasure, his right side is joy, his left side is delight, and his identity is bliss. And being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we are also, essentially our intrinsic nature is to enjoy with Krishna. When Krishna is pleased, we're naturally pleased. And as we said many times before, real enjoyment is experienced not in being alone, but in the company of others. Sometimes we may just go to our room, to take a break, but if we want to enjoy, we search out other persons. 1, 2, 3, whatever. So that very same Taittiriya Upanishad confirms Krishna does not like solitude. It's stated in that Upanishad, Kama yata bahu sham praja yeya. Kama yata bahu sham praja yeya. Quote, the Supreme Lord desired, let me become many, let me father many living entities. Didn't want to be alone. Just like a family man, or a couple in this world. They're married, and one time Prabhupada said, what is grihastha life without children? And it's a pleasure to raise nice Krishna conscious children. So in the same way, the Lord expanded as many. For his personal enjoyment, he expands his Ladini Shakti, Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani, the divine couple. So anyway, back to the pastime. So Radha was late that day. She was late, but not of her own accord. Rather because of the watchful eye of her mother-in-law, Jatila. As a pastime, yes, Radharani is married to Abhimanyu, and Abhimanyu's mother is Jatila. And as we've discussed many times, Jatila is aware of Radha and Krishna's love for each other and is always on the lookout to make sure they do not meet. So that day, particular day when this rendezvous was supposed to take place at Kamaravan, Jatila was just keeping a keen eye on Sri Radha and was not even letting her go for her scheduled worship at Surya Kund, divine Surya Kund. And as a result, the acharyas write that with every passing moment, Krishna's kama, his loving desire to be with Sri Radha, intensified. And they write that mood can still be felt in Kamaravan today. And of course, this is another reason for the name, Kamaravan. Kama means desire. So it's a forest where Krishna felt intense spiritual desire for Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani, the Queen of Vrindavan's association. So the acharyas say that Krishna was in this mood of anxious, vipralambam bhav. He was repeatedly rising from his seat off there and walking down the path and then returning to his seat again and walking down the path and returning to sit on the blanket. His eagerness to meet Sri Radha built up minute by minute until it's described, he was actually on the verge of fainting. So to prevent himself from actually falling down and losing consciousness, as well as to let Sri Radha know the seriousness of his condition is described, what did he do? He spoke to his flute. With so much nectar. Krishna spoke to his flute. He addressed his flute as follows, "O friend," everything in Vrindavan's personal, remember. "Friend, you are my final resort. Please communicate to Sri Radha that I stand on the edge of a precipice from which only her touch can pull me back." So the flute, listen to this, the flute went into a state of samadhi, And without even making a sound, without playing a note, the flute communicated Krishna's message to Sri Radha. All glories to Krishna's flute. Now fortunately, when Sri Radha received the flute's message, she was already close enough to save Krishna before he fell to the ground. And it's interesting just how she did that. It's described that as soon as she got close enough to see Krishna, she stepped on a dry branch, making a loud, like cracking noise. And Krishna heard the noise, and at this looking around, he saw Radharani's golden effulgence, which is described alone prevented him from falling unconscious. Wow. Radharani's golden effulgence, that prevented him from falling unconscious. So leaving the spot where he was sitting on his blanket, he rushed forward to embrace her. And that afternoon they spent many hours together, walking, talking, and joking in this very auspicious Kamaravan forest. And sometime later, Sri Radha left to go back to Yavat. And Krishna, it's described he just continued walking around in a daze of love, it said, in a daze of love. And while he was walking around in this daze of love, a thought came to his mind. Where's my blanket? He couldn't remember he brought his blanket, was sitting on it, this daze of love. Where's my blanket? Did I bring it to Kamaravan? Or did I leave it with the cowherd boys? So the acharyas say that, still bewildered by the effect of Sri Radha's company, and even more so by her departure, he couldn't recall where was his blanket. So he addressed a group of gopis nearby who were, it's described they were busy tidying up the sacred forest. That's how it's described. I thought that was interesting. Tidying up the sacred forest. He said, and he also addressed them in a similar way as he addressed his flute earlier. Dear friends, gopis, have you seen my winter blanket somewhere in this forest? Now, though shy, these girls, these Braja gopis, took the rare chance to talk with Krishna. One gopi said, "Oh, a strong gust of wind blew it into the Jamuna. I saw it float away," teasing him. Krishna was startled. Then another gopi said, "I don't think that was Krishna's blanket. On our way here, I saw some cows near the path chewing on something. I think it was Krishna's blanket." So then a third girl teased, "Krishna, don't worry. For the small price of a flute song and a dance, we will give you a new blanket, much better than the old one." But Krishna was in no mood for joking. So he left to continue looking for his blanket. Now, it gets better, like everything in Krishna consciousness, it just gets better. Suddenly, in the forest, he came upon who? Durvasa Muni, standing with long, matted locks, wearing only a loincloth. And what? Happily holding Krishna's blanket. So it's said that, how's it put? Though many sages roam the forests of Bharat in India, Durvasa Muni is easily recognized amongst all of them. How so? The Mahabharata, Adi Parva, 120, verses 4 to 5, describes him as follows, Durvasa Muni. Ugram bharya charatatra brahmanam sam sita vratam digudha nischa yam dharme yam tam durvasa samvidu. Sounds pretty strong, pretty heavy, yes. Quote, there was a brahmana who executed extreme austerities and who always keeps his thoughts and decisions about dharma extremely secret. That sage was known as Durvasa. Durvasa Muni ki. So standing before Krishna was that very person, Durvasa Muni, holding Krishna's blanket. It's described as if he had just discovered a great treasure. And certainly it was. So then Durvasa Muni said to Krishna, "O son of Nanda, is this your blanket?" To which Krishna replied, "O Muni, it was mine until it came to you. My duty is to distribute wealth to the brahmanas daily, but I can never accept a gift from a brahmana other than his gift of transcendental knowledge." Wow. Therefore, what you hold now belongs to you. You know the principles of Dharma, the knowledge that paves the way to liberation for conditioned souls. Please do with the blanket as you wish. My respectful obeisances unto you. All glories to you. Wow, Krishna's words to the Brahmana, Durvasa Muni. Now, pleased with Krishna's humility and kindness, Durvasa Muni accepted the Lord's blanket, Kamara, as what? Mahaprasad. The sage knew that by wearing that blanket, he would be freed from the cycle of birth and death. It's called tadiya, things that are used by the Lord or the Lord's pure devotees. They take on a spiritual quality. They're called tadiya, related to the Lord. All that tadiya is very potent. Actually, I was remembering that Uddhava, Sri Uddhava, teaches us about the importance of honoring Krishna's remnants in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 6, verse 46. There he says, and I quote Uddhava, Sri Uddhava, simply by decorating ourselves with the garlands, oils, cloths, and ornaments you, Krishna, have enjoyed, and by eating the remnants of your meals, we, your servants, will indeed conquer over your illusory energy. Hare Krishna. So that's but, one pastime amongst many about Krishna's blanket, or blankets, which if we hear about attentively, will help to awaken our dormant love for the Lord. They're actually unlimited things which we can meditate on about Krishna. And in that sense, there's no excuse for not falling in love with Him, even in this one lifetime. There's so much material, Krishna conscious material, that we can hear about, that will be a stimulus for ecstatic love. Like just hearing about Krishna's blanket today. So in this regard, we'll conclude today with a nice description of Krishna from Srila Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion, again, chapter 26, that you might want to meditate on so you can dream about the Lord in your sleep. Because Prabhupada has said, what we do during the day, the thoughts and things that we see during the day, sometimes we combine them even in funny ways to dream about them at night. He said, therefore dreams are illusion. But he said, when you dream about Krishna or the spiritual master, he said, that's a very nice dream. So here's some material that maybe when you close your eyes tonight, you can remember our beloved Krishna. So Nectar of Devotion states as follows. Generally, there are 4 kinds of garments on the body of Krishna. His shirt, turban, belt, and wearing garments. In Vrindavan, he used to put on reddish garments with a golden shirt on his body and an orange-colored turban on his head. The different kinds of belts combined with his enchanting smile used to always increase the transcendental bliss of his associates. This dress of Krishna is described as gorgeous. Gorgeous. As a baby elephant is sometimes dressed in colorful clothing, so Krishna's gorgeousness was manifest by decoration of colorful clothing on the different parts of his transcendental body. Sri Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki. Nectar of Devotion ki. Sri Rupa Prabhupada ki. So Prabhus, thank you. Just a blanket of the Lord brings us so much pleasure. I think I can find a few more pastimes about Krishna's blanket. If I can, we'll continue our discussion on that tadiya, that blanket. If not, we'll move on to some other paraphernalia in our hopes of being stimulated to the point of one day experiencing ecstasy of Krishna consciousness. It's possible by Srila Prabhupada's mercy. So see you next Friday. From Sri Vrindavan Dham. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari, Shrimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dhama ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, back home, back to Godhead ki, Go Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe, Shine, glorious to Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back once again to our ongoing series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham.
Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari Vajabhakata Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari Vajabhakata Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari Sri Gaura Hari Sahi Goshta Bihari Nanda Jasomati Chita Hari Nanda Jasomati Chita Hari Dhira Damodara Ishaye Kana Dhira Damodara Ishaye Kana Bhova Mandire Bashi Karaha Bojana Bhova Mandire Bashi Karaha Bojana Nandirani Giri Baradari Baladeva Saha Saka Vaise Sari Sari Shukta Shakhari Vaji Lalita Kushmanda Dalidana Dugda Tumi Dari Mocha Kanda Muda Bora Mash Bora Rotika Kritana Taskuli Pista Kakir Kuli Payasana Kapura Amrita Keli Ramba Kirashara Amrita Rasalama Gadasha Pakora Luci Sinisar Puri Ladura Sabali Bhojana Korena Krishna Hoye Kutuhali Radhikara Pakayana Bibida Bhanjana Paramayanande Krishna Korena Bhojana Chale Bale Ladukai Sri Madhu Mangala Radhikari Gani Hari Nayanera Kone Tripta Hoye Kai Krishna Jasoda Bhavani Bhojanande Priya Krishna Subhasita Bari Sabe Mukha Prakaloy Hare Sari Sari Asta Mukha Prakaliya Jata Sakagane Anande Vishrama Kore Baladeva Sane Jambula Rasalane Jambula Masala Tahake Krishna Chandra Sukhe Nijagela Vishalaka Shiki Pucha Chamara Dulaya Apurva Sayaya Krishna Sukhe Nirayaya Yasomati Anga Priye Danishtaya Nito Sri Krishna Prasad Radha Unje Hoye Prito Lalitari Sakti Gana Avashesha Paya Mane Mane Sukhe Radha Krishna Guna Gaya Hari Lila Ekamatra Jahara Pramoda Bhogarati Gai Thakur Bhakti Vinoda Kata Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari Vajapa Kata Vatsala Sri Gaura Hari Sri Gaura Hari Sahi Gosta Bihari Sri Gaura Hari Sahi Gosta Bihari Nanda Jasomati